Thanks very much for tuning into Unmissable. I'm Nabila Jamal. Our top story tonight, of course, is Vladimir Putin, who's arrived in India. India-Russia relationship looking at a new dawn. We're going to take you through deep into the bonhomie between the two countries, the two chiefs. And also, we will take you through IndiGo at this point, going through a massive crisis where operations have collapsed after new rules to ensure crew is not overworked has been put into play, which IndiGo clearly is not coping. And finally, in our top story on Day Tonight, we'll take you through cops stopping Kartigai Deepam ritual, which has led to a controversy, and we'll take you through those details. As always, the headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally has welcomed Russian President Vladimir Putin at Delhi's Palam Airport, a rare diplomatic gesture reflecting the significance of the two-day visit and Modi's selective history of personally receiving foreign leaders, yet again established. India will pay around 2 billion. In fact, at this point, we're looking at IndiGo pilots who are right now on many of them following the new policy of cruise safety and discipline and timeline. So the Federation of Indian Pilots blames IndiGo's lean manpower strategy and hiring freeze for hundreds of flight cancellations and delays, leaving thousands of travelers stranded at Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru and other major airports. Over 80 Padma awardee doctors have issued a national health advisory warning that air pollution is a continuous threat, contributing to over one-third of respiratory deaths and nearly 40% of stroke-related fatalities in India. Rape-accused MLA Rahul Mamkootathil will approach the Kerala High Court after the Sessions Court rejected his anticipatory bail, with police now preparing for his possible arrest or surrender in the coming days. At Haveri's CG Bellard Government College, hundreds of Hindu students staged a saffron shawl protest inside classrooms in response to Muslim girls wearing hijab, escalating campus tensions and prompting calls for administrative action to restore order. The Karnataka government approves Hate Speech and Hate Crime Prevention Bill 2025, proposing up to 3 years jail and 5,000 rupees fine, covering digital platforms, media and other channels, to be tabled in the upcoming Belagavi legislature session. California doctor Salvador Plasencia receives 30 months in federal prison for supplying ketamine to Friends star Matthew Perry, marking the first sentencing in the actor's 2023 overdose death case after a multi-year federal investigation. All right, let's take you through our top story tonight on Deep Dive. Russian President Vladimir Putin has finally arrived in Delhi. Much awaited visit. The bonhomie with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is clearly visible and it's palpable. Their friendship, make no mistake here, this is India's most high-stakes diplomatic test in years. Right before Putin landed, India and Russia, we hear, had already extensive talks about multiple deals, including a nuclear deal. In fact, initial reports suggested that a $2 billion deal to lease a nuclear-powered submarine was sealed, but information coming in that that's still under discussion. Now, certainly this meeting sets the tone for two-day visit where extensive talks on defense, energy and strategy are all going to be on the table. This is Putin's first visit since the Ukraine war began, since Western sanctions tightened, since the ICC issued a warrant against him, and since the US ramped up tariff pressures on India. Every handshake today is being watched in the US, in Brussels, Beijing, Washington, all very closely watching the two leaders meeting. And clearly we know why. At this point, both nations have been quite close despite US sanctions and Europe's opposition. Friendship between India and Russia has only grown in proportion. Well, look at the timing as well. At this point, all eyes are on this meet here is because US has slapped 50% tariffs on Indian goods. EU, India, FTA is currently at a final stretch. German Chancellor is currently visiting, the plan has been approved where he's going to be visiting India in January. EU leaders are Republic Day chief guests next month. So EU extensively engages in India, but not with Russia. US also engaging with India, but still slapping sanctions on India for buying oil from Russia. So it seems like a sore point here, this meeting between the two nations, the Europe and the United States, the West entirely staring and evaluating. Right before Putin arrived, envoys of French, Germany and the UK wrote a sharp op-ed as well in an Indian newspaper attacking Putin and questioning the war. In fact, Russia also hit back. A diplomatic face-off happened, fought in India's media space as well. Russia has gone on to say, if anything, I will launch a war against Europe. That's how far Russia has gone, taking Europe and the US head on. India, though, has been diplomatic, has been very clear on one hand also, saying that India watches out for its own interests. India has also clearly mentioned that we are not signatories to the Rome Statute. So we are not obliged to act on the ICC warrant against Russia. So therefore, our dealings with Russia will be as per our interests. This visit is not about optics here. It's all about economy and our strategic autonomy. 25 years of special partnership and a new twist, Putin's visit here, marking 25 years of India-Russia strategic partnership. In the last 11 years, Modi has met Putin 19 times, and that's huge, and that's also rare. And today, the relationship is being reinvented under all this fire. Russia is facing historic labor shortage and sanctions, a shrinking young population, manpower diverted to war, and Moscow wants Indian workers and skilled talent, a new chapter of course. Defense also, something that both countries are very closely looking at. Russia once supplied nearly 90% of India's weapons. Today, that share has dropped to 36%, the lowest in 60 years. So Russia wants to establish that equation, wants to improve defense ties with India. India has also diversified, also gone to France and US as big players for defense and supplies. So Russia now still wanting to rekindle that equation. So here's what we're looking at. We're looking at defense, we're looking at labor tie-up, and of course a lot more on India and Russia at this point, deciding to bank more on their local currency than the US's dollar. So the rupee and ruble, something that India and Russia have extensively tried to sharpen, and this coming together would also mean a way of undermining the US dollar's dominance and improving our own currency. So this is more than one. It's at this point, India and Russia are also looking at partnerships on nuclear submarine access, hypersonic tech, S-400 missile systems, legacy platform support. Well, all of this, that's going to be talked about extensively. India depends on talks on the S-500 air defense system, and Su-57 fighter jet co-production are also expected. So, well, that's that. Oil, that's also largely bought from Russia. Russia has become India's #1 crude supplier as well. So bilateral trade has hit nearly 68.7 billion with Russia, mostly to do with oil and energy. Well, sanctions of billions are there in place, yes, but at the same time, both the countries are looking at its personal interests. Let me bring in our panelists on board to give us a little more clarity on Russia and India's tie-up. It's going to be interesting to see what the two country chiefs are going to be discussing on this very day. The next 2 days are going to be extensively important. Let me bring in Ambassador Veena Sikri, former Indian diplomat, Professor Swaran Singh, School of International Studies, and Major General S.P. Asthana, defense and security expert. I really appreciate all of you joining us here tonight. Let me start with Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ma'am, India's strategic autonomy could not have been more bold and established for the world to watch, with all those heavy sanctions on Russia and Europe at this point trying as much as possible to criticize this friendship. Here you have Russia and India's friendship gaining strength and momentum like it's never been before. The Prime Minister Modi arriving at the airport to personally receive Putin, visuals on our screens, if he could play that out extensively, on the bonhomie that the two leaders are sharing. They're going to have a great dinner tonight. They will have talks tomorrow, day after. So the strategic partnership between Russia and India is right now seeing a high pitch. Give us a little more on what message India is sending out to the world today.
Well, I think the first and most important message is one of strategic autonomy, that we will develop our relations with every country of the world in keeping with our own interests, our national interests and security and other interests, and of course, depending on the response we get from that country. And I think that this message is particularly strong with the visit of President Putin because President Trump had imposed tariffs, a special 25% extra tariff on India because of our purchases of Russian oil. But India considered this to be very unfair and discriminatory because similar tariffs have not been imposed on countries like China, which buy many more times the energy products from Russia than India does, and neither has it been imposed on Europe, which also has been buying energy products from Russia. So we have not, given in on that, and we've continued to buy. But of course, although purchases of energy products from Russia have gone down after the sanctions on the large Russian oil companies, but still there will be aspects of energy to be discussed, which will include, Sakhalin oil supply, oil development and India's investment there, the Vladivostok-Chennai link, and that could be another way for transporting energy as well, and the possibility of India buying these small modular nuclear reactors from Russia, because these are important when in the context of developing artificial intelligence centers, which need huge amounts of dedicated power supplies. And there's a lot of talk now of using these small modular nuclear reactors for that purpose. So certainly energy is going to be a very important part. But we should also know that we cannot see this visit only in the context of the current volatile geopolitical situation that prevails worldwide, because we have been continuing this special privileged strategic partnership with Russia for decades. And this is, the 23rd bilateral summit in the last 26 years. So that's not a small amount. It shows the great importance that both countries place for each other. And this is also President Putin's first visit to India for a bilateral summit after the Russia-Ukraine conflict started. So that's, a special significance. So certainly that will be discussed.
But give us a little more on the kind of challenge that we're signaling to the Western-led global order. Is this a challenge to the Western-led global order? What exactly are we exuding through this meeting, this bonhomie, at a time when there are ICC warrants on Russia and claims of war crimes on Russia, on Putin? Ukraine war is still on. At a time like this, where Europe and the West are looking at Russia as the enemy, as the evil, and someone indulging in war crimes, ICC warrants on him. Here is India indulging extensively and more. This is much more than friendship, much more than, diplomacy. It's certainly friendship. That's what's visible. So what kind of signal in the sense, and what challenge are we giving to the Western-led global order?
I think the correct term is the Western-led global order. What is happening to the Western-led global order is a question that we should be asking now. But certainly you're right that the Western countries would consider it in the light in which you have spelled out in your question, that they would consider it that, this is... But I must say, as you said yourself, the European leaders have been invited to the Republic Day parade. So we are not discriminating. We are not saying we are only developing relations with Russia and not with any other Western country. We have maintained, again, this concept of strategic autonomy, that we are inviting other countries. We are talking to them. We are hoping that President Trump will come to India for the Quad Summit this year. Very much being talked about, but nothing being finalized yet. And why should any country where we are developing relations with them as well worry about what we are doing with Russia? Because this is part, as I said, nothing that we are bringing in new now at this time with a particular view to anger any other country, but we are doing it because this is part of our tradition of good relationship with Russia. For us, foreign policy is not a zero-sum game. We don't develop relations with Russia at the expense or of any other country or at the cost of minimizing relations with any other country. Every country's relationship is developed in its own rights based on principles and bilateral interests. And in the Ukraine-Russia conflict as well, Prime Minister Modi is one of the few leaders who is touched with both sides. President Zelensky has called our Prime Minister. President Putin has spoken about the Ukraine-Russia conflict with our Prime Minister many, many times. And surely this time too they will be talking about it. So this is a very, very significant visit in its own right. And in the context of the current geopolitical fragility that exists worldwide, this does acquire special significance.
All right. If I could also bring in Major General Asthana on that. Major General Asthana, here we're looking at India also. At the same time, while it engages with Russia extensively with regards to oil, defense supplies that Russia used to be a major source of has now shifted to France, to the United States, and of course India's indigenous weaponry that we're banking on. Make in India is what we strive on, and then our main sources have now shifted to America and France. So what does that also spell out? What does that really mean? While we're great friends with Russia, we're also not banking heavily entirely on the country. Also shifting our equations when it comes to sourcing of defense to America and France, keeping the West also happy.
No, it's not the question of keeping anybody happy. We are very clear in our mind that we need to be self-reliant, and for that self-reliance, it can't happen overnight. And therefore, there is a dependence. There are certain critical technologies which we need to buy, and that we are buying. And at the same time, not to be dependent on one country, we are diversifying. Nothing has gone wrong with the relationship between Russia and India, but certainly Russia is involved in a major conflict, and therefore if we source everything from one country, we may have problems subsequently. Number one. Number two, Russia is a trusted partner. If between two countries or our relationship with any other country has gone ups and downs, has seen ups and downs, but it is only Russia which has been an absolutely stable relationship. Thirdly, Russia gave us technology and defense technology at a time when nobody was sharing with us. So we have a lot of dependence on Russia in terms of spare parts, in terms of a fair amount of equipment, and the equipment which Russia has given to us, it has also stood the test of time. It is strong equipment. It can withstand various kinds of terrains. India has a variety of terrains, and therefore they have a very sturdy equipment which suits us well. So therefore, the amount of equipment has certainly gone down because we diversified, and diversification was important. And also we also started producing a lot from our side. But notwithstanding that, items like S-400, collaborations like BrahMos, these are success stories. And we would like to have more, whether it is S-400 or the next generation S-500. The remaining S-400 are yet to come. Similarly, you mentioned in your commentary about the nuclear submarine. Also, there are other issues which we are doing, like RELOS, Reciprocal Exchange of Logistics Support Agreement. Now, we are signing with Russia now, but we have already signed with half a dozen countries earlier, including America, including France. So, it's not that a major exception is being done. At the same time, it is a trusted partnership. They helped us in 71 war when nobody else and USA was on the other side. So we would like to continue this kind of a relationship. And also, if you recall, we have a major concern now with Russia in a manner that the trade is, we are importing $63 billion and exporting only $5 billion. Now, this is a very wide gap. Now, I think Russians are conscious of this problem, and therefore, even in his initial interview, Peskov mentioned that we are bringing the teams to address this particular issue in particular, and both the businessmen of both the countries to sit down together and find and work out as to what maximum way can we import from India and set this balance right, because this balance also disturbs the rupee ruble trade. If Russia has far too much of rupees, then
Yeah, yeah.
obviously we will have to choose some other currency. So that is so there is a lot on the table. Education is another, manpower movement and mobility, manpower mobility is another issues, and therefore I think this is a partnership which is important. In fact, a little earlier I was speaking in one of the European channels, and I had to say in no uncertain terms, see, we have to look after our interest and view Russia from our prism of our national interest, and not European prism or USA's prism. So that is the way we look at Russia, and I think we have every reason to do all kinds of deals with Russia. Back to you.
Yeah. No, Professor, if I could also bring you in, Professor Swaran Singh, on the Indian rupee and ruble, the two currencies. Do you believe that Russia and India relationship also is in a bid to strengthen the two currencies, while you have the US dollar dominance now widening, and Indian rupee has fallen extensively against the dollar? This meeting and the trade with Russia that India does is also going to strengthen the rupee in that sense. That's also one of the main focus. Could you elaborate how that would happen when the world banks and relies heavily on the US dollar? Nations like India, Russia coming together and extensively doing trade within the two countries, between each other. How does that strengthen the rupee?
See, it's a bilateral matter for India and Russia, and they have already repeatedly said that now occasionally up to 90% of their bilateral trade is done in local currencies. Now, local currencies sometimes mean ruble, rupee, and UAE dinar also being used sometime in that exchange. At BRICS level, some of the countries, China particularly, to some extent Russia, have even spoken about de-dollarization. India does not talk about de-dollarization. India talks of simply increasing the kind of use of local currencies, which is the focus. And I think I agree with General Astana. The only issue is when the trade grows exponentially from $8 billion in 2020 to $68 billion in 2024, and particularly when the trade is virtually one-sided. India is exporting about $4.9 billion and importing about $64 billion. The trouble becomes, what will Moscow do with so many rupees on their side in that sense? One possibility is that they could invest it back in India. That's a possibility. They are exploring that in terms of going in for refineries, building refineries in India. But those are challenges, not the intention, but how to operationalize that, and whether that is going to strengthen Indian rupee, that remains a bit of uncertain situation, because strength of rupee doesn't depend only in terms of how do we deal in a bilateral trade. It depends on the larger basket of currencies where Indian rupee either becomes stronger or weaker. So that is definitely something that will be under discussion. But more important under discussion would be how to ensure certain balance in their bilateral trade, particularly when Russia is very focused on using both its defense exports and energy exports. But between defense exports and energy exports, two things are likely. One, in short term, if Ukraine war comes to an end, Russian energy supplies are going to go back to European countries, which are much more premium, high value destinations for Russia, than sending it to India. It was just before pandemic about 2% part of India's imports of total oil. It has hit up to 36, 37% when we were buying a lot of oil from Russia. It could go back to same situation. Russia would like to sell oil and gas to European countries, and India would then have to explore other sources of energy, which is where nuclear cooperation, both at the level of heavy, big-sized reactors like Kudankulam, how will we move forward in completing 3, 4, and 5 units, but also small modular reactors. Indeed, nuclear cooperation is something where Russia would like to expand, and India can become a very complementary player because India needs lots of energy to become Viksit Bharat. So here, right from mining to fabricating fuel to waste management, the whole fuel cycle is something that they want to expand cooperation. You mentioned about nuclear submarines. That takes us to defense cooperation. So Russia's other major pillar, which complements with India, is to build defense cooperation, and that's not simply India importing equipment or even the old style license production. Now for 20 years, India and Russia have tried to move that relationship into joint research and development, joint production, and expanding India's export competitiveness in that sense. Russia's exports to India in terms of defense equipment have not just is not one example where it has gone down from 69-70% of India's total imports to 36-37%. Russia's overall defense exports around the world have really shrunk, and they need to expand that back because that is the main source of foreign exchange earning from Russia for Russia, and therefore they would like to see how partnerships with India can make them sustain in terms of being competitive in global market, not just with India. BrahMos is a great example in this. So they would like to recalibrate some of these relationships so that they can be sustained, and what can be sustained will be carried forward. India's interest in ensuring a certain balance in trade is to expand it to other sectors. India is presenting GCCs, Global Capability Centers, India's professional talent.
Right.
India is talking about pharmaceutical, education, and all other sectors. So India would like to broad base it, and using broad base then to make it future secure, future proof in that sense, so that volatility in international relations doesn't really push Russia and India with tariffs and sanctions into levels of discomfort. So I think that is the focus on both sides, to make it broad based and ensure that it sustains in coming years.
A final word. A final word, if I could bring in from Ms. Veena Sikri on what can the common man see as benefit with the two countries coming together? Of course, overall economy, yes, but we see very clearly that labor migration is something that Russia is really hoping to. Their labor force is shrinking. They're really looking at hiring extensively from India to bridge their workforce gap. So in that sense, what is the citizen of India benefiting from this relationship?
I think manpower exports from India to Russia will definitely benefit the common man. It will benefit from because people from small towns will go. It's not only the people from big cities who will go. And I think there will be a vast variety of skills that Russia will request for their manpower requirements from India. And this will cover a vast majority, of skills, and highly skilled and highly educated, but not so skilled, maybe construction and so on. So many different areas are there because there's so many towns and cities in Russia that are also being built. India itself has opened up 2 new consulates in Russia, in different parts of Russia, to cater to the increased trade focus and manpower export focus that we would see. But I also think that regular trade increases, as was just said, that we have to increase our exports beyond the very paltry $5 billion a year that India now exports. And this will not only help the average exporter, because, with the tariffs imposed by America, by President Trump's government, a lot of exports to the US have fallen. But we have been trying to compensate this by increasing our exports of those very same commodities to other countries, looking for fresh markets. And President Putin himself has said that they are willing to open up their markets to all the items where President Trump has, where the tariffs imposed by President Trump has restricted the Indian exports. So this means that, we're looking at, seafood supplies, we're looking at pharmaceuticals, we're looking at gems and jewelry, we're looking at textiles. Textiles is a very big factor because the Russian market could be a very big market for Indian textile, and ready-made garments and so on. So these are really benefits that will go across the country because the traders, the manufacturers, the exporters are spread all across the country, east, west, north, south. And so I think they are all looking with great interest to the outcome of this visit so that the benefit can come to them directly and they can really gear up in a big way. But the Russian market is very big and very sophisticated now. So, all the goods that work going to the West can go here now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I really appreciate Ms. Veena Sikri, Professor Swaran Singh and Major General S.P.S. Thana for joining us and giving us a wholesome view of what India-Russia relations are looking like and what could be on the table for discussions for the next 2 days. Trust News9 to bring you every detail as and when it comes. We played you live visuals all through this half an hour to show you the present live, beaming live visuals for you to show what currently is happening between Modi and Putin, the two leaders and their visit. Thanks very much. I will slip into a short break. We're coming back on the other side on IndiGo Airlines having a serious meltdown, leaving passengers at this point on the edge. Several flights have been cancelled, hundreds and hundreds of them, all because IndiGo was asked to follow some rules. It seems like they were not planned ahead of time for this holiday season, and now they're facing the brunt. Our guests are already on board. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
सोच रहा हूँ टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस ले लूं ताकि मेरे बाद फैमिली को पैसों की कमी ना हो।
तू भी ले ले। अबे जल्दी क्या है, बाद में देख लेंगे। आराम से आराम से आराम से। अब तक कुणाल को हार्ट अटैक आ गया यार।
पॉलिसी बाजार पर 0 GST के साथ अब 1 करोड़ का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 400 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
यही मौका है बिजनेस को बढ़ाने का,
पर पैसा अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया है।
अब टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए।
आपके जैसे सुपर हीरोज ऐसी छोटी मोटी प्रॉब्लम से थोड़ी ना रुकते हैं, इसीलिए लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए।
IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात। लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा। अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना, कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
Welcome back. Well, let me take you through all that's happening with the Indian aviation. We're possibly seeing the worst meltdown that we've seen in ages. IndiGo crews can't cope up with the new safety rules, and that's what's clear. Travelers across India are living quite the nightmare. Flights have been cancelled, several delayed, long queues, and people have zero clarity on when this situation would be fixed. 6-hour delay, that's as long as many passengers have faced, or cancellation after that. So this has really hit major airports in India, because India's largest airline, IndiGo, that really has nearly 65% of the market share, has run out of crew, quite literally. IndiGo runs over 2,200 flights daily, 60% of India's aviation market it is, but for the third day in a row we are looking at operations that have collapsed. Now, widespread disruptions. Delhi today, I'm talking about in the last 24 hours, 95 plus cancellations have been reported. Hyderabad, 60 plus flights have been affected. Bengaluru, 70 plus flights hit. Mumbai, Ahmedabad and more. These are the major airports that we're looking at cancellations and delays. Passengers are, of course, very furious. They're stuck for hours with no information and nobody really trying to calm nerves, even IndiGo crew are trying their best, but the situation is so bad that it seems like the airline is unable to handle this at this point. So what really triggered India's biggest airline meltdown? The new FDTL, flight duty time limit rules. These rules were brought in by the DGCA to protect pilots and protect passenger safety. For years now, pilots warned that long duty hours were that basically caused fatigue and put lives at risk because crew were overstretched. And now the DGCA have come up with strict rules. As per the new rules, the crew can only fly 8 hours a day, 35 hours a week, 125 hours a month, 1,000 hours a year, plus mandatory rest for them, at least 10 hours rest in every 24 hours. Rest must be at least twice the length of the flight that they just operated. These are the guidelines of the rules. These rules kicked in fully on November 1st, and suddenly IndiGo didn't have enough pilots or cabin crew to operate the massive schedule, that too holiday season. Now, was this avoidable? Well, airlines knew that this day was coming. Why didn't IndiGo plan ahead? Why were passengers kept in the dark? Where is the top leadership of IndiGo at this point? Why aren't they on the front lines with their ground staff? Well, that's the question we're asking. How does a market leader with the biggest fleet collapse overnight? Was there a contingency plan or not? Well, we're looking at pilots there fatigued. Now, rules come in place to protect them, especially after the Air India crash. But airlines and the administration not being able to handle it. And this is a holiday season, let me warn you, but what we want is passenger safety. That's what's priority, and IndiGo must buck up. Let me bring in Aryansh Singh, who's a stranded passenger, gives us a little on his ordeal. Captain Prashant Dalla, former Flight Operations Inspector, DGCA, and Group Captain VN Jha, who's aviation expert and former IAF officer. Let me start with Group Captain Jha. Sir, your take on this, on IndiGo having the largest market share. Ideally, we would believe that they have a contingency plan and a plan, to ensure that the holiday season is managed. The rule was announced much in advance. It was to be implemented on November 1st. It's now nearly a month post, and it seems like now they are collapsing. What do you think has happened here?
Very good evening, Nabila. This issue of the FDTL, we have been struggling, ever since. I had done my specialization in aerospace medicine, which deals with the human factor in aerospace aviation, way back in 1983. And from that day onwards, even those days, this FDTL used to be a very big issue, not only in India, the world over. Even the DGCA, ICAO, everyone has been struggling to have a slight bit of flexibility in the operations. But then, whenever any accident happens, which has a pointing finger towards the flight fatigue, no one can shrug away from the responsibility, and very few people want to take the responsibility of any aviation which is taking place owing to the fatigue limits. So now, over as many decades, these are the rules which have been laid down. And what new rules have come? You have just mentioned it has come in force last year. I think about in the beginning of the last year. But then there was a period given. There was a implementation period given to them, and there are very many things which are to be taken care of. And the first and foremost was the duty hours and the rest period. This was the first thing, that every pilot should have 48 hours of rest, which earlier used to be 36 hours. So IndiGo even implemented that. They did do that. Second factor was the night landing limitation, which is now come to 2 only from the earlier 6. And it has got a very big impact on the airline, especially IndiGo, which has many flights in the night time or V times. And the extent of the night definition has been extended by another hour. So invariably, what used to be earlier the 6 landings now has become 2, and it has put a big restrictions on the bigger agencies like IndiGo, which has got immense number of the flights which happen. So all these have led into this. Surely the IndiGo flight management, they are mostly responsible for it. And there's a big problem of experienced hands. The trained pilots, there's a limitation of the trained pilots in India. Today, India needs at least 50% more pilots, qualified pilot, airline transport airline pilots. The number should be at least 50% more than what it is right now. But they are unable. Every school, every training institute in the flight, they are struggling with this. They can't cope up there. So all these have led to the situation where we are. And here, when it comes to the FDTL and the fatigue aspect, no one can take a chance. So there are a bit of 1 hour extension, 1 hour of the adjustment period has still been given, but then that is insufficient to the airline, which has got a big volume of operation, to compensate for the pilots who have gone off the duty. So it's bad luck for the IndiGo. They should have taken preemptive actions much earlier than that they are taking now. I hope it settles down. Nabila.
Can I ask you about pilot fatigue, sir? How serious is this safety risk, and why did authorities wait so long to enforce such tough actions? Pilots being fatigued, and I know this was triggered after the Air India crash, where in a way some reports suggested that the pilots were to be blamed, and then you had a whole hue and cry about how pilots are overworked. First of all, Air India crash, is it the pilot to blame or not? In fact, in my personal opinion, of whatever I've read, it was false, targeting on the pilots. But yet, this also is a reason to why DGCA has come up with these rules so soon. But tell us about the safety risk of pilots being overworked and what really goes through on ground. How long are they working usually?
Look, pilot fatigue or the fatigue is a chapter which is slightly grayish in definition, and what is laid down in the books may not be applicable to every individual, but then you can't have a rule for every individual. It has to be a collective, and that is why the definition has been given. Secondly, look at the pilot. It is not only the flying time that we are concerned about. Flying time is from the time that you have started the engine or you have reached the aircraft, you have done the pre-flight checks of the aircraft, started the engine. From there, the time starts till the time the engine has been switched off. That is the flight time. That is very strict right now. It is maximum of 10 hours under certain conditions. Otherwise, it is about 8 hours of flying time. Now, the FDTL includes many of the actions before the flight, like the pilot has to leave his residence or the hotel. From there, he has to come to the air traffic control. He files his flight plan. He takes all the briefings from there, and then he comes to the desk. He comes to the aircraft, and there from it starts again. After landing, he switches off the aircraft, goes to the counter where he hands over the report if he has got any observations on the flight or the flying performance of the aircraft. He makes a note of that, and there his time ends. So it's a longish time. So in that, surely, if I am very, very motivated, if I have to operate this for some reason or other, I am motivated that that bit of fatigue may not come. But look what happens in the airlines. These are the monotonous flying, long scheduled flying. Once I have started, I have taken off, I have put the undercarriage up and then set course. From thereafter, it's a very boring flight. I have sat in the, being a human factors specialist from the Air Force, we used to get time to study these pilots' actions and the pilots' duty schedules within the cockpit. And we used to sit there in the cockpit and observe that. It used to be very, very boring because after he has set course, if it is 2 hours flight or 3 hours flight, one pilot goes to, invariably he reclines the seat and then he goes for a snoring. Many of the aircraft accidents, including that happened in the Mangalore, the pilot was heard snoring on the flight cockpit voice recorder. These are the problems that they have. It's a very boring flight, unlike Air Force, where from the moment you have taken off, your brain is working overtime. Every type of things happens in the cockpit, every action that you have to take, and every maneuver that you have to get into it. It pumps the blood, it pumps the adrenaline into your system, and that doesn't let you doze off. So these are entirely two different situations. Even in Air Force, we get fatigued. Even in Air Force, there are restrictions. But the civil airliner, it's a relatively boring job. First pilot, second pilot, they have got the distribution of their things. There are a lot of checks, cross checks in flight there as well. But still, it's a boring flying, and that is where the fatigue aspect is much more likely to happen.
Absolutely. You know, passengers are bearing the brunt, and Aryansh, who's a flyer, really had to go through an ordeal. Aryansh, my limited question to you: how did this impact you, your travel plans, and did the crew attend to you, give you information? Did you get a refund?
Hi Nabila, thanks for having me here. So yeah, coming to the question, my flight got cancelled at the very last moment, and no, the refund was not provided. I mean, I had like 5 passengers with me. For 4 of them, we got alternative route, but the thing was like there were very limited seats which were available. So because of that, one of my friend was she has opted for a refund, but like still it's pending. The thing is, most of the agents and the customer care from IndiGo, they were not very helpful. It was very difficult to reach out to them. Firstly, because there were multiple flights that were cancelled. So because of that, a lot of people were actually trying to resolve their issues. So the wait time was like 30-40 minutes. The call was getting dropped. So it was very hectic to actually reach out to the customer care. When I reached airport to have my alternate flight, it was like hell lot of chaos over there. Like people were shouting and like a lot of them were fighting. The crew members were like, very limited. Even the flight that was like provided to me as an alternate route, even that got delayed. It was on on a runway for like 2 hours, on an aero bridge for like 2 hours. We were informed that the crew member is not there. There were only like 3 air hostess who were there. One was still missing, and she actually reported after 2 hours. And the people were like really frustrated. They started shouting, making scene out of that. So overall, my experience was like really bad. So my 5 hours of journey turned into like the whole day like mess. And yeah, like that was my experience overall.
All right, Aryansh. Well, we seem to have lost your audio there, but finally, Mr. Jha, your one and only suggestion to passengers who are stranded, they're not getting refunds. How do they fight this out?
Look, passengers have to be, they have to be slightly more accommodative. These limitations are because of the pilot's fatigue. Do they want to fly with the fatigued pilot? I don't think anyone will like that. But then it is the overall responsibility of the company. They should ensure that it doesn't happen. In spite of all these regulations, there are periods when about 5% of the pilot, they may report something unusual. They may not feel perfectly on that day of flight. They may withdraw, and that much of reserve in the flight scheduling. Aircrew scheduling, that does take place. I might not have been able to sleep last night at all. Now that will show on to my performance next day. But the airline doesn't know that I have not slept last night. And similar situations happen when the pilot turn out or they give a call that I am unwell, I am not going through today. So these things happen, and if the passengers are not accommodative, I can understand someone takes a flight for very urgent reason where they have to reach for a certain duty, certain work type, or maybe leisure, or there could be another flight which will, they will miss out. So there are compulsions on the passenger side to be slightly impatient. But then, look, do you want to take a chance with a fatigued pilot to land? No, I don't think that will be there. Passengers will also have.
No, I don't, sir. No, as a passenger, I'm not going to think of all of that. If I'm paying money, I get a service. I basically am buying a service. So if I'm paying money, I need to get a refund. It should be a seamless process. So
you're right,
that's what's more important. I think passenger rights also must be secured.
I'll just add, the pilot's task is not that easy. If I am fatigued, I may forget to lower my undercarriage when I'm going for landing. It has happened. And the other crew, the cabin crew, they have got the urgent task. The moment flight takes off, announcements come with the snacks or meals or something, take it out, do all the cleaning works. They are absolutely tight. They may be fatigued. They also may be fatigued, but they are not flying the aircraft. At the most, they will feel the aches and pains of being fatigued. They are sluggish.
Top ranking officers of IndiGo, including the CEO and all the top ranking officers are responsible for not having a contingency plan. So the entire responsibility at this point, in my view, rests on them. But that's all I have time for. Mr. Jha, thank you very much. And Aryansh, we heard you. We hope your issue is solved at the earliest. Thank you. All right, slipping into a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Speed, it's relative. The more you speed up, the more the world slows down. And when you are fast enough, everything becomes still. That's when you see the world as it truly is. Servo Hypersport F5, when speed is your default.
A resurgent India is racing towards the Viksit Bharat goal, braving global economic headwinds. Bulletproofing our economy from these uncertainties are Bharat's homegrown businesses. Powered by tech-led innovation, Indian entrepreneurs are truly scaling up, riding the next wave of disruption with AI and cloud to break into the big global league. TV9 Network in association with SAP presents Visionaries of Viksit Bharat, a series celebrating inspirational business leaders shaping tomorrow. Watch them take an iconic leap at Visionaries of Viksit Bharat conclaves. Exclusively on News 9.
लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा। अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना, कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
Eastern India's first Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025 on 20th and 21st December at Taj Tal Kutir, Kolkata. EIILM Kolkata presents a Business and Economy Literature Fest 2025. Curation and ideation partner Story Nest.
All right, let's start with our top story on day tonight. Day 8, and Congress leader who has now been suspended from Kerala, Rahul Mamkootathil, is still missing as rape and coercion allegations pile up. A woman has accused him of repeated sexual assault, forcing her to end a pregnancy and threatening her with private recordings. Another woman from Bengaluru now says that he raped her after promising marriage. Congress has expelled him. Party leaders admit multiple complaints were flagged earlier but were ignored. The Sessions Court has examined chats, audio clips and other material and denied him bail as well. Rahul now faces serious charges under the new Nyaya Sanhita, including rape, coercion, miscarriage without consent and intimidation, along with IT Act violations. His lawyers will now appeal in the Kerala High Court, but multiple FIRs mounting evidence and his disappearance now only tightening the noose. To our next top story here. Tense scenes in Madurai. Pro-Hindu groups clashed with the police after being stopped from lighting the ceremonial Deepam lamp at the Tiruparamkundram temple. A day earlier, the Madras High Court allowed petitioners under CISF protection to perform the ritual by 6 p.m. but the lamp wasn't lit, citing Section 144 restrictions. This has triggered fresh protests on the hill steps. Police say gatherings were banned, arrests may be made even of CISF if they intervene. The BJP has accused the DMK government of blocking a lawful Hindu ceremony and disrespecting faith. The question now is, why was the court-approved ritual stopped and how will the state defend this decision? Tempers only rising ahead of the major temple festival. All right, let's cut across to new rules now being imposed in Bengaluru airports. From December 8th, new rules at Bengaluru airports, pickup zones. Every vehicle gets 8 minutes free, stay longer, and you pay nearly 8 times more. 13 minutes is 150, 18 minutes is 300. Beyond 18 minutes, your car can be towed. BIAL says this is no clear traffic chaos. This is to clear traffic chaos at terminals 1 and 2, especially during the holiday rush. Commercial taxis get 10 minutes free in parking areas, not the curbsides. Cab drivers say poor airport traffic planning will now cost them money and a protest is likely. Airport argues the change will make pickups faster and safer. Many drivers though insist fair traffic flow can't come at their expense. All right, here's a big story and a big win for renters nationwide. Under the new home rent rules 2025, landlords cannot take more than 2 months' rent as security deposit. No more 6 to 10 months of cash blocked now. A huge relief for tenants in Mumbai, Bengaluru and a few other metros. All rent agreements must now be registered within 2 months or face 5,000 penalty. There's also a new standard lease format stopping surprise or unfair clauses. So a standard lease format across the country that will apply. The law protects tenants now against sudden rent hikes and helps both sides avoid disputes through clear digital records. The aim, of course, is to be fair for both the tenant and the lessee or, the owner. And more homes are, as we see currently, India is renting out so many homes. Now, tenants had to pay nearly 3 to 6 months, up to 1 year advance sometimes. But all of that will be restricted clearly in this new rule that's come into play. Only 2 months advance you can pay. All right, as we see, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said something that was long pending. He says visas are a sovereign decision. S. Jaishankar says visas are a sovereign decision. The US can reject or cancel visas purely on national security grounds. Since April, many Indian students have lost visas over minor violations, even pressured to leave the country. The Indian government has now stepped up to speak. In fact, the US now wants all visa applicants, including H-1B workers and their dependents, to keep public social media profiles for background checks. Washington says visas are a privilege and stronger screening is needed under the new security first approach. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, has pushed back. He says India is pushing for fair treatment, but the US policy is clear. Security comes first, but India is also clear that it is our basic right. If at all it's a national security threat, on those grounds you can deny it. If not, it's the right of people, Indians, largely, to get their visas if they're legitimate and credible. Thanks very much for tuning in. You do have a great night.
अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया।
आप टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए।
लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे, अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए।
IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात।
25 लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे?
पैसों की चिंता आप मत कीजिए पापा।
मैम, सर का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम अप्रूव हो गया है।
आप
पॉलिसी बाजार
पर 0 GST के साथ अब 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
सर, वाटर प्रूफिंग के लिए बेस्ट है।
वेंकी जी, एक छोटा सा गिफ्ट बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस देने के लिए।
ऐसा क्या है इसमें?
1 साल में वाटर प्रूफिंग को कुछ भी हुआ तो वापस करके देंगे।
वापस करके देंगे?
वो भी फ्री। पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा। अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना, कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the Nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the Nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Hello and thank you for tuning into News 9. I'm Deepak Suresh Kumar. There's a lot of action in the national capital in light of President Putin's arrival for a 2-day visit to attend the 23rd India-Russia summit. We'll get you all that and much more after a quick check on the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin in India for 2-day visit for 23rd India-Russia annual summit. PM Modi breaks protocol, receives Putin at Palam Airport. PM Modi hosts private dinner for Russian President Vladimir Putin at 7 local Yanmark. Evening talks expected to set the tone for 23rd India-Russia summit tomorrow with key agreements anticipated. Union Civil Aviation Minister pulls up IndiGo over operational crisis, questions delay in crew hiring. IndiGo ordered to give updates every 15 days. Airline assures DGCA stable operations by 10th February 2026. Tamil Nadu BJP chief Nayanar Nagendran arrested after trying to climb the sacred hill with supporters to light Kartigai Deepam lamp in Madurai. Ukraine seeks real peace, not appeasement with Russia, says Foreign Minister. President Trump calls recent talks with Putin reasonably good, but path ahead remains unclear.